Rabbi Harold M. Schulweis, a leading rabbinic voice of the conservative movement who passed away in 2014, shared a midrash about the creation of human beings. As he tells it, the angels of heaven band together to conspire against God's intent to form Adam and Eve in God's image. The angels are jealous that ordinary human beings should inherit such spiritual treasure. The angels plot to hide goodness and truth from mankind. One angel proposes to hide God's mystery in the highest mountains. Another suggests concealing it beneath the deepest seas. But the shrewdest angel counsels, humans will search for godliness in the remotest of places. Hide it within them. It's the last place they will search for the miracles of godliness. The miracle of godliness exists within us and all around us. We shouldn't have to go searching far and wide to find it. Being created B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, means that godliness, the source of nourishment for our souls, for the deepest parts of ourselves, is waiting for us to uncover it. We are fortunate to be able to find godliness in this physical space. When I give tours of this building, I always save the sanctuary for last. Most of our regular community activity takes place downstairs. I love the small shul and the intimate, light-filled setting it gives us for communal prayer and study. The social hall is in need of a facelift, yet that creaky and streaked floor carries the marks of generations of Hebrew school students and Kiddush celebrants. Even the kitchen is filled with nostalgia, as I often hear stories of the wonderful and generous volunteers who took it upon themselves to be there week in and week out to prep Kiddush. And even yesterday, there was joy and laughter emanating from the kitchen space as our volunteers prepared the breakfast we'll enjoy this evening. But this room is the locus. Inevitably, when I bring guests who have never been here before up the stairs and into the back of the room, we descend into silence together. This grand space, with the light streaming in, the larger-than-life arc, the enormous windows, it's built for awe. Yet despite that initial reaction, silence is not what this room is meant for. It was built to be filled with people. This space yearns to hear Alex sing out with us singing along, to echo with the sound of the shofar, to hear the stories of the synagogue passed down as we celebrated our 125th anniversary this past year, to quietly hum as the room fills up for B'nai Mitzvah or a high holiday celebration. For me, looking out from this vantage point on the bima, I can't help but think of the milestones that are marked in this room. There are a lot of ways to measure the year that has passed, and for me, I start to tally life cycle events. The babies named, the children bar and bat mitzvahed, the times I've ducked into that back closet right there to pull out the chuppah poles, and of course, the funerals I've officiated. This is a spot where we mark the most important occasions in our lives. Some of those occasions we plan for, and others we find ourselves caught completely off guard. This past June, I had agreed in advance to do a baby naming for a 1-year-old girl whose parents were looking for an officiant through a Hebrew college listserv. It was a lovely and silly afternoon. You cannot control a 1-year-old, even on a day that is all about them. As I was saying the Misha Berach, preparing to announce her name, this adorable, chubby redhead was crawling around my feet and climbing up my shins. Yet when I announced her Hebrew name for the first time, Shoshana, she turned, lifted her head, and looked right in my eyes, as if she was just waiting for that name to become hers. The next afternoon, I was at Lorraine Daniluk's bedside, saying the Vidui for end of life, as her family prepared for her passing. On the other end of life's journey, she too opened her eyes and looked in my direction as I said the familiar words of the Shema. The following week, I officiated funerals on back-to-back days. I co-officiated a backyard wedding. And finally, I drove to New York for about 18 hours to attend Alex and Shira's son Shai's bris. It was a 2-week whirlwind. But it was also an important reminder that these moments are taking place around us all the time. As one friend mourns, another is celebrating. As we memorialize a loved one who has died, there is new life being welcomed into the world just down the street. It's heartbreaking and also invigorating to see these cycles play out in real time across our community. The godliness is exposed in a different way each and every time. There are 2 resources that I bring with me into the room anytime I am preparing for a life cycle event. This is what's known as a rabbi's manual. It's a real thing. This edition is published by the Reform movement, and there are versions published by the Orthodox, Conservative, and Reconstructionist movements as well. It is tabbed with sections for birth through death, with liturgical options for any major Jewish life cycle moments that happen in between. When planning any sort of ceremony or ritual, this is my starting place for framing out what elements to include. I never take the rabbi's manual anywhere without also grabbing this. Since my day is working on the farm, I've carried a small moleskin notebook around with me to jot down any important information I may want to remember later. This notebook provides the balance to the prescribed prayers and rituals offered by the manual. This notebook holds the information that makes a service or ceremony personally meaningful. Who a baby will be named after, what were the sources of joy in someone's life, the stories and memories, the hobbies and passions, the favorite foods, the important relationships. This book contains life. When these 2 factors can work in harmony, when the love and connection we bring with us are able to imbue themselves into the liturgy, that's when we're able to access the magic and beauty that our tradition has to offer. That's why Ron's Kol Nidre last night and this room ringing out with the familiar tune of Avinu Malkeinu can bring us to tears. The words on their own, annulling vows and repeated pleas to our Father, our King, we struggle with the words. But the tunes, the setting, these are our stories. We revel in them. That is the force of generations of memory and tradition, making those words more powerful than we could otherwise imagine. In that overlap, where the ritual and the personal mingle and become one, that's where we reveal the godliness around us. Seeking that overlap offers another way of approaching the challenging twin pillars of the High Holiday: prayer and tshuva, return. Rabbi Art Green, the founder of Hebrew College, among many other accolades to his name, writes in his book, Seek My Face, Speak My Name, that prayer is an inward act. This inwardness is not only that of the person, but the shared inner self of the human heart, the human community, and the world around us. Inwardness means that the one is to be found within all beings. We find God by turning into ourselves, to be sure, but also in the inward experience that we share with others. But our restoration of wholeness is not to be achieved by prayer alone. The liturgy only brings us to the edge of the Jordan, but never takes us across into the promised land. To cross over, then, we need to bring our own godliness to the prayers. There's a line in Psalm 23, which we'll sing as part of the Yizkor service, that has always stood out to me as the most dramatic verse. Gam ki elech begeitz al mavet lo irara ki ata imadi. This is usually translated as, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. The words gates al mavet, here translated as valley of the shadow of death, are actually really difficult to translate. And although Psalm 23, perhaps more than any other piece of liturgy, has an almost universally accepted translation, it is most likely incorrect. This word was more likely originally tzalmut, a place of deep darkness. This place of deep darkness is someplace much more familiar than the valley of the shadow of death. Unfortunately, it's a place we've likely all been before, and someplace we ultimately can't avoid. We have felt darkness encroaching. We've been terrified of getting lost in it. But lo irara, ki ata imadi. We needn't fear because you are there with me. That's you with a capital Y referring to God. That's you as we look to our left and our right or on our Zoom screen and appreciate the people beside us. That's you as we lovingly appreciate the people we're remembering today and the ways they shaped our lives. And that's you looking inward and returning to the self you want to be. In the words of our tradition, and the people who surround us, and the memories and experiences we always carry with us, we find the godliness all around us. In just a moment,